we're just gonna chat, and I'm gonna ask you questions about, your childhood, and we're talking about Why Live, which is about all the shit you've been through and what keeps you going.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I've been thinking about it a lot.
Have you been?
Yeah. I have.
What's popping up for you?
So I think, one of the big things that keeps popping up is that I think when I was younger, I thought that there would come a time where I would do enough therapy and, whatever other meetings and recovery and friends, and that there would come a time where I wouldn't have to ask myself that question on an ongoing basis. I thought there would come a day where it would be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to be here forever and ever, amen, and everything is wonderful, and I never have to ask that question again.
Totally.
And what is more true for me is that it's a decision, living is a decision that I have to make over and over again. And sometimes I have stretches of time, and it's like I don't ask myself that question every day.
Right.
And then there are stretches of time, like this past year, I've had a number of these stretches where I'm asking it almost on, a daily basis.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that, and in some ways I'm glad I didn't know that at the beginning.
Right.
I think at the beginning when I was still just trying to get clean and sober and had so much unhealed trauma.
So is that the beginning for you, is when you got sober, is
no,
sort of a before and after?
No, I guess for me, and tell me if I'm just jumping in too fast if there's any.
We're recording.
Oh, okay, all right. I think for me the beginning was, actually a long time back. The beginning for me was in high school when I got put into foster care, and
I was talking about the beginning of healing.
Oh, the beginning. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
the
beginning of healing. I think started for me when I got put into foster care, and I was introduced to therapy for the first time. It was mandated. Wow. It was mandated therapy.
Yeah.
And I didn't do shit because I was a 14-year-old teenager who was using and drinking and mad at the world, and but it was. I think that therapist kept me from killing myself and killing my mother, which would have dramatically changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. Yeah.
And enabled me to make a connection to my coach and my coach's wife, and that was a life-saving thing. So, I think that's one beginning, and then I think the other big beginning was after a very serious suicide attempt that left me committed into a psych hospital for 30 days. And I started working with a psychiatrist there, who I ended up doing some outpatient therapy with. And, that's another life-saving relationship. And then that relationship ended up getting me into my relationship with Meg Kemper, who, absolutely saved my life over and over and helped me get sober and clean and,
Was she a mentor? Or?
She was my therapist.
Oh, she was your therapist.
She was my therapist.
Okay.
And she was my therapist for 20 years. Off
wow.
And on. There were breaks in the time that I worked with her, but yeah, she was my therapist for 20 years, and she absolutely, I often, and I gave her. It's cheesy, but I gave her the song, I'm everything I am because you love me, because that's how I feel. I feel like everything I am today, in large part, is a result of my work with her and my involvement in recovery. So.
Yeah, I think we all have a person or persons that really it was just the timing of it was so perfect and so life-changing. I'm so glad you found somebody like that.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, you mentioned using and angry at the world. What was going on for you? I know you were in foster care. How did all that come about?
Yeah, so, my beginning of life is that my mom was married 5 different times, I think.
Jesus, really?
Before I was taken out of the home. every single one of the guys. Well, first of all, I didn't know my father. He left when I was like 18 months old or something. But including him, every single one of the guys that were in the home were physically and, except for the last guy that I was there with, sexually abusive.
Jesus Christ.
My first memory of the world is sexual abuse.
Whoa.
At 3 years old.
Oh, God.
And, you know, like, it's a very specific memory, and I can track the age because of some other things that were happening. And that, you know, and my mom knew about it. Her third husband, you know, they were involved in, like, swinging and sex parties and stuff. And I know my mom knew about it because she was like, they were going to go to a sex party one night, and she's like, take Terry. I don't feel like going. Take Terry. And so, you know,
An adult took you to a swing party?
Her husband at the time, yeah.
Jesus God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and you know, I mean, and you know, at one point I tried to tell somebody, when I was in 5th grade, I tried to tell somebody outside the home what was going on. Now, to complicate matters, my mom was a police officer.
Oh,
so
wow.
My mom was a cop everywhere we lived.
Okay. So you couldn't really ask for help safely.
Well, when I asked for help, you know, what happened was she said she would handle it internally, and because she was a police officer, they were like, great, awesome. You know, and the only way that I ended up being able to get out of the house at the end at 14 was, you know, I ran away, and you know, they picked me up after, you know, a week or 10 days or something, and you know, I was arrested for possession, and I had taken a gun that had been mine. I mean, she had given me a gun when I was in 2nd grade.
How old were you when you got arrested?
14.
Okay.
And, you know, I went back, and she basically said, you know, I will drop the charges if you'll come to live back home. And so I tried that. But by this time, she was with a new guy who was my ex-drug dealer.
Oh, God. It just gets better and better. Wow.
It's a story, man. I'm telling you.
Damn.
So she was at that time with my ex-drug dealer, who then decided that, you know, he wasn't going to supply me anymore, and I couldn't get into his stash, or he would, you know, there would be issues. And he was going to be daddy to me. You know, he was going to be like the big man. So, you know, we had a few fisticuffs, and then one day my mom was coming home, and I had decided that I was going to kill her. And I was up in the 2nd floor of this old house where we were staying, and you know, and drew down on her and was ready, and she like got behind the car and called the police.
Wow. So it was a real standoff.
It was a real thing. And so that's how I ended up in foster care.
Okay.
They were like, you know, okay, we seriously need to get this kid out of the house.
Damn.
So, you know, it was just all these. I was so mad at her for all of the years. You know, and there was all kinds of fucked up stuff. Like, we were homeless sometimes.
Right.
She had pissed some people off when we were in like kindergarten, 1st grade. You know, I don't know if she was a dirty cop. I don't know what it was, but there were bad people. That's what, you know, she was like, there are bad people that are going to try to come after you. You need to take a different way home from school every day. Here are some maneuvers that you need to know
terrifying.
about. You know,
so there's no safety anywhere.
No.
There's always a sense of chaos and
And sometimes we didn't have food, and sometimes we didn't have heat, and sometimes we lived in the car, and we moved in the middle of the night a couple of times.
Jesus.
I mean, it was just, you know, it was just, and the guy that, you know, told you about taking me to the sex parties, like, you know, when their marriage ended, he, for several months, they had to hide me because he had threatened to kidnap me and take me with him.
Oh, God.
So yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, and I'm not making this shit up. Like,
no, I believe it.
It's just
like, for me, like, I had I was experiencing sexual abuse at a very young age, and all the people I went to, all the adults, did all the wrong things. So I could not trust, any adult to do the right thing or to fix it or make it better. So I just got really quiet and, like you found drugs and alcohol, but I was not. I was in a very safe suburban home. The danger was me, and it sounds like it was just from all sides for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean, and the good years are the years that were with her, the last husband that I was in the home with, and that guy, like, had a habit of, like, drawing his gun. He was a cop, too. Had a habit of drawing his gun to terrorize us, basically. Shot me in the shoulder once. He shot my foster brother in the gut once. He put a gun to my head the day that I left home and ran away that time. It was because he had put a gun to my head and threatened to kill me, and then decided that no, he really should kill my coach and his wife and their family because he blamed them for me not wanting to be in the house.
Right. Wow.
And so he gave me his wedding ring. He's like, you win a race, you win a trophy every time you run a race these days, don't you? And I said, yeah. And it was one of those, I've got the gun to my head, and I'm like, how do you answer this question? And he's like, well, here's your trophy for having disrupted the family. And he handed me the wedding ring.
So you were outside of the house. You were around some adult that I guess cared for you.
My coach and my coach's wife. Yeah, my coach, Coach Height, Jim Height, was my cross country coach, track coach.
So you found athletics.
And he was, oh God, yeah, athletics saved my life. Like it kept me in school. Yeah, yeah, and it made that link to Coach and his wife Mariana. I often say Coach kept me in school, and Mariana kept me alive.
Wow.
Because
I'm so glad along the way
athletes, athletics is what kept me in school and allowed me to make that connection with them, I mean, without athletics, like, I wouldn't have been able to go to college because I went to college on a scholarship. Like,
wow.
I wouldn't have had any reason to want to stay in school in high school, like,
I was very athletic, but the gender stuff got in my way, and like they wanted me on the field hockey team, and I just couldn't stand the idea of wearing a skirt. Like it was just so traumatic at that point. I had grown up in a where we wore uniforms, and my solution to that was to wear pants underneath my dress.
Yeah.
So I imagine, I'm just saying this because I imagine there was also gender and sexuality stuff going on.
Oh yeah.
At this time.
Oh yeah.
As well as
other... My first, I remember it's so stereotypical, but my first crush was my 5th grade PE teacher.
Oh, totally, yeah.
I mean, like, I just adored Billy Bruce. Like, I adored her. And,
Billy Bruce.
there's a song, Ode to a Gym Teacher. It's it's not Holly Near. It's, I can't remember the person who sings it right this second, but
one of those feminist 70s.
Yeah. Singer-songwriter. But yeah, I was totally like crushed out on Billy Bruce, but didn't have a word for it, but my first sort of dating, first time I kissed a woman was I kissed a bartender at a gay bar because the boyfriend, the guy I was kind of hanging out with and trying to be a straight person with, for a couple of years when I was like 12 and 13. We went to the gay bar because my mom worked the door, and she reasoned that if we were going to go out and do something, she'd rather me be at the gay bar where she could keep an eye on me.
Okay.
And so we were going out to the gay bar at 13 years old.
So she was sort of imposing this chaos, at the same time had this like insane mother urge, maternal sort of that. Wow. She
just wanted to be in control of what was going on with me.
Okay,
and
so it wasn't really maternal.
if it served her, and it also, I think, by that time I was starting to draw outside attention with my behavior, and she couldn't afford that, right? And so she didn't want me and James going out and getting caught for underage drinking or any of that kind of stuff.
Right, 'cause she was a cop. And
Right. Even though I was using from her stash at home, where it was just so fucked up, Sam. Wow. It was really fucked up. Wow. It was really fucked up. But But yeah, I remember when the bartender kissed me at the gay bar when I was like 13, maybe 13 because before I left. I was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like. Yes, that's it. And so I broke up with the guy and started, trying to like date girls or meet girls or whatever. And the gender stuff, like I always wanted to be I always wanted to do what the guys were doing. I never wanted to wear the dresses. And when I was little, like I remember very distinctly in kindergarten, I said I wanted to be a cowboy for Halloween.
Yes.
And my mom bought this like red cowboy dress, and I was like, "What? There's no cowboys wearing dresses. Like I've seen have you not seen the westerns? Like cowboys don't wear dresses.
Yeah.
And I just remember like, and I was in kindergarten, and all the way through, like I just remember, in third grade, I wanted to play baseball because I played baseball and stickball, in the streets, and I wanted to play baseball.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that my mom did, and I can't say very many good things about my mom, but she did me a solid in that in third grade when I wanted to play baseball, and we were living in Tennessee at the time, and none of the guy coaches would take me on their team, and it was a big deal to like even get the permission to try out, and because they were like, you're a girl, girls don't play baseball, blah, blah, blah. But none of the coaches drew me for their team. So my mom volunteered to be a coach.
Oh, nice.
And so it was me, and I remember it was me and Danielle, who I also think I had the hugest crush on, but I didn't have the words for it then.
So as a means of also controlling, that worked out in your favor for this time. So you were going to gay bars, very precocious, and you were doing drugs. And then you're 14, and you get put in foster care.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
So I was in foster care, and the Popes were the foster family that I ended up being with for most of the time. Yeah, Popes, Pope, Pope, and then apostrophe S was
okay.
So I stayed with the Popes, and they were an older couple, probably in their 60s. Mrs. Pope would get me up at like 4 a.m. to watch like the PTA club or whatever the hell it was in the 80s, with the preacher and
Jim Baker.
Yeah, one of those guys. And she would pray over me because I had the devil in me because I wore boys underpants and wouldn't wear a bra, and I was gay, and I was obviously mentally deranged.
My God.
So I had to get up in the morning with her, and like I get an allowance for clothes, right, from DFACS, Department of Family and Children's Services. So I would go out and I would buy the clothes I wanted, right?
Yeah.
And so I was wearing guys' underwear, and I didn't bother with bra unless I could find a sports bra that was really super tight. Because I'd been rapping with an Ace Rap. And,
really? Already?
Yeah, in high school.
Wow.
And then when they came out with sports bras, like I started wearing them like a size or two too small to really kind of press things down. And again, I didn't have words for trans at that time.
Sure.
Like, I knew about drag kings and drag queens, but it didn't.
How old were you when you knew about that?
13 when we were going to the gay bar.
Okay. I didn't have any knowledge of that stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Mr. Pope would drive me to school every day because they were like, he didn't trust me to get to school. And then they moved, and we were living too far for me to take the bus or whatever. I guess I don't know, but for whatever reason, and he drove this old white car, and I just remember it was so tediously painful because he was like. He always had a lot of phlegm, and so he was doing this like,
oh God,
and swallowing the phlegm. And he drove like 25 miles an hour, and 55, and so it's just like it took forever.
Oh God,
it was just so torturous.
Yes.
So that was an experience. But I was grateful. I was grateful they took me in because
you were safe.
The other like option that was available, nobody else in the county would take me. It was a very small county, Pembroke, Georgia, really small town. Nobody else would take me. They took me, and I'm grateful they did. Because the alternative would have been the alternative would have been the youth detention center. So
wow. that wouldn't have gone well.
And it wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't have gone well. Well, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
If I'd been there.
Right.
So.
I know that's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the popes.
So the popes, and so I graduated, you know,
Mhm.
amazingly so.
Mhm.
And I graduated high school with 3 state championships, one in softball, one in cross country, one in track.
It's amazing.
And I got a softball and cross country scholarship to ECU, and that's what got me into North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And
ECU.
East Carolina University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that was where I was, and I thought that like leaving Pembroke and putting all that behind me would be like clean slate, everything's good, golden, right? You know, and I got there, and there I was. You know how that is, right?
Yeah.
And so I had this kind of dual life of like being the athlete, you know, and doing mostly good in school, and being like the fine upstanding, you've conquered it all, you know, you are a survivor or whatever, and then on the other side, drinking and drugging and trying to cope with everything that I was feeling.
Wow.
Because everything that I was feeling didn't go away.
Yeah.
And and at that time I didn't even remember half the shit that I came to remember later. And so
Right.
it was it was bad, but it was going to get worse. But yeah, it was, again, it was an opportunity that came about because of athletics and because of Coach Height, and Imogene Turner, who had been an assistant basketball coach at one point, ended up at ECU, and so that was kind of a neat thing in some ways, because had somebody there that knew me, and it was a difficult thing in some ways because she could call Coach and Mariana and say, Terry's fucking up, and so I tried to really keep everything that was fuck upable like away from her attention, right? And about in my sophomore year, like the drinking and drugging and mental health stuff just was really out of control. I went from getting A's and B's to C's and D's.
And were you suicidal at this point, or had you
In
been?
my sophomore year, I was. Yeah. In my sophomore year, I was. And in my sophomore year, in spring of that year, I failed a drug test. And so, junior year. Yeah. Junior year. Spring sophomore year, failed a drug test. They had me start seeing a therapist at the university, and then I had to start doing they did surprise drug tests in addition to the scheduled drug tests, and failed another one, and they were like, third strike, you're out, kind of a thing.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just really like I felt like the pressure was ramping down. I tried to cut back on the drugs and alcohol because they also mandated that I go to AA. And for
So
a
did you
period
go?
of time, I did, because I had to. I mean, my scholarship depended upon it.
Okay.
I had to be. What do you say? Compliant with my treatment, whatever. And that was part of my treatment.
Gotcha.
And so, I went, and let me tell you, being a queer, like gender nonconforming, trans, I don't know yet, I'm trans kid in Pitt County. In the mid 80s.
Wow.
Sucked.
Yeah.
And I had people at the meeting that there was that I went to tell me, that if I just would get right with God, things would be okay.
God.
And just so I went, I did my time. That's exactly how I thought about it. I went and did my time. I got my paper signed. And when I fulfilled the requirement, I didn't go back. And
why would you?
and I was really trying hard. I was trying so hard, Sam. And I wasn't sleeping. I was really, and they I knew there was going to be a drug test coming up my senior year. I knew there was going to be a drug test coming up, and I knew I would fail it. And I was just, I couldn't keep going. Like, you asked like the why live question. There was nothing for me. On October 3rd of 1988, there was nothing that I could answer that question in the affirmative. And so I tried to take myself out with drugs and alcohol. And kind of came to in the psych ward, knowing that being told that I was going to be locked up for 30 days.
I wonder if we were in the psych ward at the same time.
At ECU? Were you
No,
at Pitt
I
County
was-
Memorial Hospital?
I was in New York City.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to die, and I got put into Beth Israel.
Uh-huh.
It was about 1988.
Oh, okay. Yeah, from October 3rd, 1988 to whatever, sometime in November, whatever the 30 days would have been.
Damn.
When they finally let me out.
And I'm sure it was a very different experience being in the South than being in the North. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being a lesbian on the psych ward was not a big deal in 1988 New York City.
Yeah.
It just wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so far away from, like, anything I was concerned about, like, necessarily
Gotcha.
at that time that,
Gotcha.
I don't remember that being an issue because I just was who I was, and mostly, it was about just trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
For them, it was about trying to get me to want to live and stay alive. And for me, it was about how can I get out of this place.
Did they put you on medication, or what was the deal?
No, they didn't put me on medication. They had me do, all the like arts and crafts, therapy stuff that you do, and they had me see Sue Ehrlich was her name. She was a psychiatrist. She was really cute.
Oh no!
That actually
That
played a
helped.
part in why I was like, willing
Signing up for.
to keep seeing her every day.
Yeah.
And she was great because the first time I went in, she had a resident with her, or she had a medical student or something, or somebody with her, and they were trying to get me to talk, and I was like, and the medical student said, "You can trust us." I'm like, "I don't know you from Cheyenne shit."
Right.
And you saying I can trust you doesn't do jack. In
Right.
fact, it makes me think I can't trust you.
Right.
And so she,
Wow.
the next day when she came back, she didn't bring any medical student with her.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't have anything to say to you.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, okay, well, we'll just sit here together.
Uh-huh.
And that's how it started.
Oh, wow.
And then she's like, let's go down to my office and sit so we have some privacy, And I still like have a very vivid memory of that little tiny office and the green couch with the little pattern in it. And she was like, "Can I ask you some yes or no questions?" Because she said, "I know sometimes it's hard to talk about like what's going on." And she's like, "Can I ask you some yes or no questions so that I can, show my supervisor that I'm doing my job, right?" And I'm like, "Well, you're
Well
cute."
played.
Okay, fine. How harmful can that be? And then she asked some doozy yes or no
Oh, wow.
questions.
Yeah.
And it really was the first time that I started saying to anyone some of the things that I had experienced. And she handled it beautifully. She didn't like run in horror. She didn't minimize. She didn't. She just was awesome. She was amazing.
Wow.
And so slowly I started talking to her about what was going on and how things were, and she started giving me some tools. And
You were like feral.
I was feral.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. That's a good word for it.
She had to really coax you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew how the game was played at that point too, because
Sure.
I had to go to therapy when I was in foster care, and then I
Right.
had therapy with the therapist after I flunked the drug test.
Right.
And so I knew how to like say stuff that seemed like I was saying stuff,
Yep.
but not really say stuff.
Yes.
And so Sue Ehrlich was the first person that I started really saying stuff to.
Okay.
And it was all because of her, just who she was and how she was, and asking those yes no questions. And if there's a
So
therapist
smart.
that sees this,
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to say what has happened. But if someone can say, "Did this happen to you?" I can nod my head yes or no.
Yeah. Wow.
And now today, like having this conversation with you, I couldn't have had this conversation with you 20 years ago.
Right. Right.
30 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it's a product of like lots of years of therapy and lots of years of being in recovery, and picking up the tools from recovery and picking up the tools from therapy and, having some practice applying them.
Well, I don't know about you, but all this sexual assault and abuse that happened to me as a kid, and then being raped later and assaulted as an adult, I just minimized all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
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 Okay.
It happened. It was then. I
Yeah,
just need to move on.
I'm good.
It's over. I'm good.
I'm
It's
good.
done.
It
I'm
wasn't
out.
a big deal.
I made it out.
Totally. Okay.
And I didn't have any feelings about it until
Right.
Not like I didn't have all the memories
Mm-hmm.
until I got sober. Because when I got sober,
Oy.
my head exploded. And then again when my daughter turned 3.
Oh,
Because
wow.
that's when the sexual assault started for me, or at least my memory of it.
Okay.
So,
Hang on to
okay.
that.
All right.
Wow.
Cool.
And of course, you don't have to say anything you don't want to say.
Yeah. Well, you know, like, there's some promises in the program that I participate in for my recovery, and one of them is, you know, you will see how your experience will benefit others.
Yes.
And I know that, you know, when I was, you know, first in therapy with Meg Kemper, I remember going to the little women's bookstore that was down here in Durham back in the day, searching the shelves for somebody that had my story. Because I just felt so alone. I mean, I felt so alone.
Oh my God.
You know, I didn't have any people in my life that were queer and recovering from the type of abuse that I had experienced so systemically over such a long period of time, and had any kind of way of getting out. You know, like I didn't see.
You're a unique
those stories.
demographic. Yeah. You're very
And I remember searching, and when, you know, what is the Courage to Heal came out. You know, I remember like I tried to read that and I couldn't because it was so triggering. Some of it was so triggering. So I was like doing this thing of like trying to read to see if there was things I could relate to or, you know, strategies for how to cope with what I was experiencing. But I couldn't find anybody with my story. And so like one of the things as I've gotten more healing under my belt, and healing is a journey, right? It's never over, right?
Yeah.
Right? But like I know how healing it has been when I've heard other people say things that I was thinking or feeling. And so I'm like, if I can talk about stuff now, maybe it helps somebody somewhere in some way. And if I can do that, then it's worth it. You know?
It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing to hear your story out of someone else's mouth. It's a game changer. So, did you find that person or?
No, not until many years later.
Okay.
You know, I there's so much to tell. But I didn't find that person until I had my sponsor friend in my recovery program who, you know, we were talking about past and talking about, you know, what's our part in things that we have done or things we've experienced or resentments that we had experienced and
that must have been really hard for you.
it was really hard because like I think one of the things and this came up with my therapist later, but one of the things that was really hard for me was all the shame that I carried. Right? And I remember, you know, talking with this person who was my sponsor, my friend, and she had a very similar, not the same, but very similar experiences, and she could talk about them. You know, like she was at a place in her own healing, in her own journey, in her own work that like she could say, yeah, you know, here's what my story is, and here's how I've come to cope with it. You know, and you know, I always felt like it must have been my fault somehow. Yeah. You know, and she was like, your only part in it was you were there.
Right.
Like, that's it. You don't have any, it's not your fault.
Right.
And kind of similar time period, you know, I told my therapist, I'm like, look, you know, it's like many different guys, like, doing this shit to me. Like, I'm the common denominator. And she looked at me, you know, Meg looked at me, and she said, no, your mom was the common denominator. And so, you know, I think there was there was some power in my therapist saying that, and then Kathy, you know, kind of saying like, your part was you were there, you're not responsible for it, it's not your shame. Right. You know.
Right. Still hard to let go of.
Yeah.
But Yeah.
And and I still haven't met anyone with my story exactly, but I've met people that had similar stories, similar enough stories that I feel like they can kind of get what that experience is like, a betrayal and fear and terror and and I love the why live, because again that's what it comes back to. You know, so many times it's like, why live? And it's been different answers over different parts of the years, but it's often been my relationships. My relationships with Mariana, my relationship with my relationship with my dog. My dog Kari was my Hey Kari, which means light or radiance. Okay. Kari was my sober dog.
Okay.
Right? Like, I got sober with Kari. And there were many days that, like, why stay alive? Well, there's no one to take care of Kari.
That guy over there? Totally.
Yeah.
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 So when did you get sober? What, I mean,
1993. Yeah, so May 25th, 1993. And it was a mess. And I got sober because it stopped working. I could drink and drink and drink and drink, and I couldn't find oblivion, because that's what I drank for. I drank for that oblivion, that freedom, that comfortably numb. The Pink Floyd song, "Comfortably Numb." Like that was my song, man. You know, like that's what I went for, and I used a lot of things for a lot of years to try to do it. You know, and drugs and alcohol were the biggest thing. And I couldn't get that. And then there'd be times when I'd be like, I remember very vividly, I went out to the bar with some friends, and we were drinking, and I was like, I'm driving, so I'm not gonna, and I drove drunk all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm no saint. Like, but this was during a period of time, I was working at a psych hospital.
Nice.
I was working at a psych hospital.
Nice.
With adolescents with dual diagnosis issues.
Which is actually a great place for you to be.
It was a really great place for me to be. I could really relate to the kids, and it was really good with them. Triggered the hell out of me every day.
No doubt.
But I went out this one night. We were in Winston-Salem, and I was like, I'm just gonna drink a couple, and then and I ended up drinking way more than I planned, of course. And I came to driving east on the westbound lane of I-40.
Holy shit.
And, there were a couple of other incidents of things like that. And I was just getting to the point where I was like, I couldn't, when I wanted to get comfortably numb or have oblivion, I couldn't make it happen. But then it would happen at these other times, and I kept kind of coming to in different situations. And, and I was, meanwhile, I'm working at the psych hospital and trying to talk to the kids about how to stay clean and sober and not engage in self-harm and, all that kind of stuff. And, and Meg, she was so patient with me. She was so patient. She died in 2013, and I still miss her every day, every day. But, but she was like, I think it might be good for you to take a little bit of a look at your drinking.
Yeah.
Like, you think?
Right.
And so over the course of like 9 months, I started going to some meetings and a recovery program, and
I was just thinking about my experience working steps in various 12-step programs, that for me, it was a slow unpeeling of, like, I would get to a step and I would have an awareness of like, oh, like that abuse was harmful to me.
Yeah.
Like it impacted me. And I had this narrative that it was all okay. That it was just kids being kids, And actually I've like been carrying this around my entire life, but it was like very slow over time, doing the steps over and over again, and being in therapy, that these things sort of have unpeeled from me.
I think that I always knew it was pretty fucked up what I experienced.
Yeah.
Like
wow. Yeah.
I knew that, but I think I didn't want it to have any lasting effect.
Yes.
Like I was like, I move away from Pembroke, I get away from my mom, like get everybody out of my life, and then I'm gonna go on, with my magical life being fine. And I think it's taken me a long time to see that that's not how it works,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And but it's also taken me a lot of time and therapy and work in recovery to figure out how to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a slow unpeeling. It's been a slow unpeeling, figuring out like how it has affected me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been a slow unpeeling of figuring out how to deal with it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have to say, you know, it started with that sponsor I had in the
Yeah.
recovery program. You
Yeah.
know, that was like, it's not your fault.
Wow.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And you know, helping me release, because I'm sorry, like, I don't forgive the fuckers.
Right.
No, that's not, you know, some programs talk about, you know, you have to forgive to heal, and I'm like, no,
you don't.
You don't.
You really don't.
You know, but what I needed to do was to quit. Like, one of the things I did was change my name.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed my last name.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want to sign the
With that name.
of one of the abusers who, you know, had legally adopted me.
Great. That's
so,
wonderful.
You know, and so a couple years into recovery, I changed my name. And that was healing, you know. And so there's been steps of healing that have allowed me to kind of not be consumed with resentment and hate every second.
Yeah.
But I definitely haven't forgiven.
Yeah.
Because it has impacted my life tremendously every day, all the time.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares. I still wake up
Yeah.
swinging, you know, I still have nightmares. And,
God, gee.
you know, like...
I'm so sorry.
And I still have intrusive thoughts and images and, you know... and, you know, I mean, I'm sad for anybody that hears this and is still in that place where I was of like, it's going to all go away one day.
Yeah.
It gets better,
Yeah.
but it doesn't all go away. At least that's not been my experience.
No, and I mean, my therapist told me, my EMDR therapist was like, it doesn't disappear. Like, I will always have PTSD.
Yeah.
But there are ways in which I can live with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was told, so when I, you know, famously went into Butner to recover from heroin and crack or relapse, I was told that if I didn't get help for my PTSD, I would relapse again. And I have been told that by numerous therapists. What was your experience with PTSD and relapse and...
Yeah, so fortunately, and probably only because I'm so fucking stubborn.
Yeah!
I got sober, you know, like I said, May 25th, 1993, and have been clean and sober since, aside from medically necessary drugs, you know, for surgeries or whatnot.
That's incredible. Congratulations, because that is
Thank
really a miracle.
It has happened sometimes 1 minute at a time. You know, I share sometimes, I used to have a stopwatch with us, or back in before smartwatches and stuff, like I had a watch that had a second hand. And I can vividly remember many times, even several years into recovery, saying, okay, I can stay sober for the next minute. For the next minute, I'm not going to go score any drugs. I'm not going to go to the liquor store. Watching it go down. You know? And so...
And suicide too, right?
And suicide too. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I've had so many... I mean, I just had in January of this year, like...
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm on medical leave right now, but... So part of my getting sober was also being diagnosed with heart failure. So I have heart failure from all of the drinking and the drugging and the running at the same time. You know, doing methamphetamines, coke, speed, and running 70 miles a week.
Yeah.
Not really good for your heart, right? And so I was diagnosed with heart failure.
That and all the trauma.
Early in sobriety.
Yeah.
But so I've been living with that, and then. I was having some other heart failure symptoms were exacerbating earlier in the fall of this year. I also had a kidney stone, which was causing a lot of pain. And I 2 years ago was diagnosed with chronic pancreatitis, which is probably from many years of drug and alcohol use too. But I had a surgery in October, trying to remove the kidney stone. They couldn't remove the kidney stone. They severed a renal artery.
Oh, Jesus.
So they had to do emergency procedure to stop the hemorrhaging.
Oh my God.
So I had all that happening. And, you know, I don't know if it was just my depression was worsening through the fall, or if it was, the challenge of multiple physical conditions, constant pain for the past 2 years, pain getting worse, and trying to be the LGBTQ Center director.
Yeah.
Who is full of hope and inspiration and fighting spirit, and all of that is true, but all this other stuff is true too, that I was fucking tired. I was fucking tired.
Yeah.
And
you have a lot of weight on your shoulders.
December, we had the winter break, the couple of weeks off of winter break, and I came back in January, and I just was like, I was like trying to get through the hours by hour, of like, okay, what do I have to do this next hour? Waking up in the morning and feeling like another day. Oh my God, another day. I can't do it. And why live? Duncan and Kendra mainly. And I don't want to leave the legacy of suicide to my daughter.
So you have a daughter.
I have a 13-year-old daughter. She just turned 13. But I kept getting up, and I kept putting one foot in front of the other. Just do the next right thing, right? Just do the next right thing. Next thing is to brush my teeth. Okay, I gotta brush. Okay, next thing is to get dressed. Okay, I gotta get dressed. Next thing is get in my car. Get to work. Do I drive my motorcycle? No. Thought of driving under 18-wheeler in my motorcycle right now is kind of seeming tempting.
Wow. Yeah. I'm
gonna take the truck.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. And I was doing that, and my therapists were getting much worried, and like, you need to take a break, you need to take a break, you need to think about disability, you need to think about leave, you need to think about something, because you can't keep going like this. I'm like, nope, I'm just going to keep going, suit up, show up, do what I need to do. And I had a meeting with my primary care physician, and apparently some of my other providers had reached out to my primary care physician. Wow. So when I saw her in February, she was like, you need to take medical leave, and you need to start tomorrow.
Terry, why do you think you were so resistant?
I love the work I do. It's really meaningful work. It's really necessary. And right now, when we've got, over 400 anti-trans bills have been introduced in general assemblies across the country, 3 in North Carolina, here in North Carolina, that has an effect on the youth.
Yeah.
When they're hearing from every direction that they're abomination, they're sinful, they're sick, they're, all these things. When I have kids that I work with, I shouldn't call them kids, I guess they're adults, but when I have students that I'm working with, that they're they come out, or they're outed to their parents, and their parents say, you can't stay with us anymore, or we're not gonna pay for your schooling. And I know that for a lot of people, school is the out. Yeah. Right? The center is there to help the student get independent student status, so they can qualify for loans, and they can qualify, and we have an emergency fund that we can get them through the semester that it takes to get them to independent student status.
Oh, okay.
We get to educate other people about how to be affirming of queer trans folks. And maybe that so changes important. The way that they are when they get to be doctors, lawyers, teachers, whatever.
Yes.
I love the work I do, and I feel so honored to be able to do it. Yeah. So I don't want to not do the work I do. Yeah. And I also think, in a less healthy way, God damn it, I don't want this stuff to be affecting me. Yeah. Still to this day, I'm like, even though there's a great book called Mindsight by Siegel, I can't remember, Dan Siegel, I think is his name. He talks about how particularly early trauma, early and sustained trauma, actually changes the wiring of your brain. It actually changes how your brain is wired, and so that really helped me understand flashbacks and everything. So I have a lot of this logical knowledge that, I am impacted by all these things, but God damn it, I don't want to be. Yeah, no. I get that, My life is really, really good today, and I want to be able to rest in life is really good today. And not be impacted by all this other stuff. And, heart failure, chronic pancreatitis, kidney stone, only a flesh wound. I can keep going. You're like that Marty Python. Yeah, exactly, right? Flesh wound. Only a flesh wound. And so I didn't want to take medical leave. And we had the 20th anniversary celebration coming up, right, too. And I, I've worked really hard to keep the center going, and we've had some
Yes.
difficult years.
Yes.
And so I really wanted to celebrate that, and I wanted to like bring alums back, and you know, and I wanted to. There's a lot of things that I had really specific ideas about what I wanted that to look like. So I wanted to be there to help plan that.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to the doctor, I was like, okay, well, how about if I take the medical leave after the semester's over? Because like, she's like, no, I'm actually worried you might be dead by then. Because what was also happening in addition to my mental health was my resting heart rate was really high, my blood pressure was high.
Oh my God.
I was having some pulmonary congestion, you know, so I was having some physical symptoms in addition to the mental health symptoms.
That just seems so unfair, Terry. You know, it seems so unfair to have to go through that kind of childhood and then be visited upon by these plagues of...
But you know, those plagues they came from my drinking and using. I mean that's...
But you couldn't help that,
right,
you know?
yeah, because like that's how I tried to cope with it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like I tried
that
to
was
cope
the best we could do.
by drinking and drugging.
Yeah.
You know, and for years I engaged in self-harm, and, you know, Meg helped me put that down, and, you know, like, there's the disordered eating stuff, you know, that I had to deal with. I mean, like, there's a lot of things that I tried to make it cope, and it was hard on my body. I mean, like, the experience itself was hard on my body, but all I did to cope with it was hard on my body.
Yes.
So, you know, like, it sucks that I have these things, and I would love not to have them, but I also know that, like, I don't know.
It's a miracle you're here, and thank God you are, because we really need you.
Thank
We
you.
really need you, Terry. Yeah, so grateful for you, really. Thank you. Well, is there anything you'd like to leave us with, or?
I will leave people with this that I picked up from DBT class,
Yes.
and I think about it a lot. And what I often tell myself is life is worth living even though there is pain. Because there are some beautiful days.
Yeah.
You know? And there are some beautiful relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It really makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I thought about, when I was convinced I would kill myself a couple years ago, I just, you know, with all this shit going on in the world, it just seemed overwhelming, and I think that's still happening now. So it's like triply important that we enlarge our relationships with each other and that we engage with each other, because it is life-saving. Our relationships with each other are life-saving.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Who bit your...
Oh my God, this is my dog Daisy.
I've been just staring at your rainbow heart.
This is my
my
dog Daisy. Yesterday, I had taken it off. I often wear it in the house just because it's comforting, and you know.
Yeah.
But I had taken it off because I was having a hot flash, which you know sucks doubly
That
when
really
you're a
sucks.
trans guy and you're having hot flashes.
Damn
like,
it.
Motherfucker. But
Damn it.
but I had taken it off and set it on the table or on the arm of the chair, and then went in to get something to drink. And when I came back, Daisy was putting her signature on it.
Very nice.
Anyway, but thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Oh, dude, it's been such a pleasure. I think your story is so powerful. And aside from that, as you say, it's just nice to sit and get to know you a little better. Yeah, even though, like, I don't want to hear all that shit happen to you, you know. Here we are.
Here we are, right?
Yeah.